A few weeks ago, we got this question in our comment section. It's about sleep and how sleep affects our ability to make decisions and solve problems. Literally every single person in the world has to make decisions every single day. So in this video, we'll talk about what sleep actually is and how researchers think sleep affects our ability to make good decisions. Then we'll use real research and data to answer the 3 hypotheses or questions from that original comment. And finally, we'll talk about what to do if sleep isn't an option, because this is the real world and sometimes you have to pull an all-nighter. It's just how it is. So thank you, Jason, for the question. If any of you have questions, then do exactly what Jason did. Throw them in the comments and I'll make a video for you too. Let's go. So before we start, it's helpful to define some terms. First, what is decision-making or problem-solving? When you make a decision, you go through a process of these 5 things in this order. First, you gather information. Then you analyze that information, which allows you to create options. And then you choose an option based on the information you gathered at the beginning. Finally, you act on the option you chose. You are going through this process constantly. You used it when you clicked on this video, and you continue to use it to decide to keep watching up till this point. Thank you for that, by the way. We also have to define sleep. And to be honest, there isn't a phenomenal answer for this. Even today, researchers don't know all the reasons why we sleep or exactly what sleep does for us. For our purposes, we're going to call sleep a biological recharge. The question then becomes, how does sleep impact our decision making? Which brings us to our last definition, something called potentiation. Think about when a person works out. They use a muscle, the muscle gets stronger. If you don't use a muscle for a while, the muscle gets weaker. Potentiation is like working out, but for your brain. Turns out when you use information, you actually strengthen the pathways in your brain, which make you better at remembering that information in the future. It's the use it or lose it principle. And it works the same way using a muscle makes that muscle stronger, and not using that muscle makes it weaker. This whole process of making pathways in your brain stronger by using them, that's potentiation. We also have the opposite, which is depotentiation, which is the process of those pathways getting weaker when they aren't used for a while. Depotentiation is important because imagine if you could exactly remember every single situation you've ever been in your entire life, you might actually go insane. But remember the question we're trying to solve here. How does sleep impact decision making? And it turns out there are 2 theories. The first is called the active system consolidation theory. This theory says that when you sleep, your memories are reactivated and reorganized. Essentially, you're using information while you sleep. When you use information, you get better at remembering it in the future. Remember, that's potentiation. It'd be like if you could bench press while you're sleeping to get stronger. The second theory is the synaptic homeostasis hypothesis. Damn, that's a mouthful. And this one's the opposite. Essentially, this theory says that when you sleep, your memories don't get used, so they're depotentiated or lost. Only certain memories are spared from that depotentiation, and those come out stronger because everything else has already been erased. In both theories, certain memories get stronger, and we know that gathering and using information is a key part of making good decisions. So both theories do show us how important sleep is for that decision-making process. Also, interestingly enough, there's an amount of data that says that both of these theories can happen at the same time. So I thought that was pretty cool. Okay, so now we know what sleep is, and we know its role in decision making. Now let's get to the actual question. Jason's comment had 3 questions, or 3 hypotheses. Hypothesis 1 is that not sleeping will make a person worse at problem solving. And that turns out is true. In 2 experiments, participants stayed up all night. And then researchers had those participants complete a test that measured memory and problem solving. It was called Raven's progressive matrices. In both experiments, the people who didn't sleep had significantly worse scores. Hypothesis 2 was that not sleeping forces a person to fall back into habits or comfortable behaviors. And it turns out that is also true. A different experiment tested the effects of not sleeping on habits versus goal-directed behavior. That study found that not sleeping hurts a person's ability to understand the effects of their decisions, and it hurts their ability to learn from past decisions. According to this study, not sleeping forces people to fall back on habits, essentially going with the choice that they're familiar with or comfortable with, even if it's not the best decision. Another study on the same topic showed that people who didn't sleep were less willing to gather information before making decisions, which caused participants to fall back into their habits more often. And finally, the third hypothesis, which kind of needs a little bit of explaining. Exhaustion is a spectrum. At one end, you have completely well rested, and on the other, you have totally deprived of sleep. And in the middle, you have partial sleep deprivation. That's like kind of this middle ground. Jason's third question, or third hypothesis, says that making decisions while just tired or partially sleep deprived is worse than making them while you're completely exhausted. Because when you're exhausted, you fall back on habits that actually have worked before to at least some degree. Whereas when you're in the middle, you're not tired enough to fall back on habits, but not well rested enough to make good decisions. I couldn't find a ton of data that would answer this question, but I think we can use the data from before to piece together a bit of an answer. Just know that I couldn't find any specific study that tested total sleep deprivation versus partial sleep deprivation on decision making. The best I could come up with is that it depends. The question is your habit better than your half-baked reasoning would be? If you're playing a video game that you play all the time, then probably the habit's great. But if you're driving in a place you don't know that well and you have to be ready for unpredictable changes, then a habit isn't good enough. Also remember that sleep deprivation lowers your brain's ability to perform across the board. Your habits aren't immune to that. Even the best athletes in the world prioritize a good night's sleep because they know how valuable it is. And they practice all the time. Everything they do is habit at this point. So is it better to get no sleep at all and just power through, or get some sleep and be tired when you wake up? It's just a game time decision for you, depending on what you're trying to accomplish, how important it is to you, and all the other stuff. Now, let's be real. Sometimes, for whatever reason, you don't have time to sleep. You do have a few options. First, exercise has been shown to prevent some of the negative effects of sleep deprivation, specifically in memory. But if you don't have time to sleep, you probably don't have time to work out or go for a run. Second, caffeine was shown to prevent some of the negative effects of not sleeping, specifically in brain function and anxiety-like behaviors. In one study, participants took 200 milligrams of caffeine, which is a little less than 2 cans of Red Bull. So do what you will with that information, but remember this is not medical advice and I'm not a doctor, so it's on you. Finally, there's evidence that naps can improve performance. Even if you can't get a full night's sleep, it might be better than nothing. I think it's important to remember that none of these options completely solve the problems that come with not sleeping. So sleep if you can, but if you can't, these might be better than doing nothing. So let's recap. Sleep is important for decision making, for problem solving, and for general health. Not sleeping generally makes people worse at decision making and forces them into habits. If you're in a position where you could either get a little bit of sleep or just power through and get none, make the game time decision and commit to it. Just try to avoid that situation as much as possible by getting a good night's sleep in the first place. And if for some reason you are sleep deprived, we talked about some options that might improve your functioning just a little bit. But remember, I'm not a doctor and it's not medical advice, so don't go suing me when you drink 19 Red Bulls and don't sleep for 2 weeks. That's it. Thank you so much for the question, Jason. If you have a question, put it in the comments. Subscribe if this was helpful, and good luck. You got this.